of the entire White House.
Donald Trump's former White House press secretary,
The violence we saw yesterday at our nation's Capitol was appalling.
Didn't realize the full extent of the violence at the Capitol until she settled in to eat a turkey sandwich for lunch on January 6th. Kayleigh McEnany telling the January 6th committee, I initially went back to my office to eat lunch, but I eventually turned up the volume on Fox News. McEnany saying she was still piecing together what was playing out at the Capitol, not merely sitting by as the attack unfolded. I in no way, shape, or form would eat a turkey sandwich if I thought the Capitol Hill was being sieged. How White House officials learned of rioters storming the Capitol on January 6th, just one of the details emerging as the House Select Committee releases new batches of transcripts from roughly 1,000 witness interviews.
The Select Committee intends to make public the bulk of its non-sensitive records before the end of the year.
A separate transcript revealing how the White House crafted a press release in December 2020 calling for the firing of anyone who accepted the election results. Hours earlier, then Attorney General Bill Barr had told the Associated Press there was no widespread voter fraud. According to the draft press release, anybody that thinks there wasn't massive fraud in 2020 election should be fired. The press release was never sent, and Barr resigned from the White House later that month. Since then, he hasn't held back in criticizing Trump's election lies.
I was somewhat demoralized because I thought, boy, if he really believes this stuff, he has, lost contact with he's become detached from reality. When I went into this and would, tell him how crazy some of these allegations were, there was never an indication of interest in what the actual facts were.
The trickle of transcript revelations coming after the committee recommended that the Justice Department bring criminal charges against former President Trump.
There was a conspiracy to defraud the United States to exchange an honest-to-goodness presidential election for a counterfeit election.
Trump's legal team downplaying the committee's findings.
The report itself is not of much value. It's written by politicians for a political purpose.
And dismissing its criminal referrals, even as Trump faces scrutiny from a DOJ special counsel that is now investigating his attempts to overturn the 2020 election.
I mean, the referral itself is pretty much worthless. The Department of Justice doesn't have to follow it.
Now, the committee has, of course, released its final report, but they have released just a fraction fill of the underlying evidence. They have put out fewer than 100 of their interview transcripts so far. They interviewed roughly 1,000 witnesses, so we are expecting many, many more transcripts, many, many more tidbits about how this all unfolded to come.
That's good, because I don't feel like you've been very busy the last couple of months, years, decades. Sarah Murray, great reporting as always. Thank you so much. Let's discuss now with former Special Assistant to President George W. Bush and USA Today columnist Scott Jennings, along with Democratic former South Carolina State Representative Bakari Sellers. Guys, thanks so much. Welcome to the show. Scott, look, the former president railed against the January 6th committee after they referred him to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution. One of his attorneys calls the referrals worthless and political noise. I don't ask this question from a legal basis. Politically, are they just noise? Are they worthless, or do they have something that can actually resonate here?
Well, the lawyers say they're worthless from a legal perspective because the DOJ is going to do whatever it's going to do outside of what Congress says. But as a political matter, obviously this entire process, this entire unfolding of this has taken a toll on Donald Trump, along with other things. But clearly this is dragging him down. I mean, look at the polling. I mean, the nation has soured on Trump even more than they already were. The Republican Party is souring on Trump. He's losing in head-to-head matchups with Ron DeSantis. When you match him up against Joe Biden in a rematch that nobody wants, he's losing badly. So obviously this, along with everything else he's got going on, is taking a real toll on him politically, even if the legal aspects of it here are less than important.
Bakari, do you feel like, my sense was part of the rationale for doing this was to put pressure on the Justice Department. Do you feel like the Justice Department needs to act on these criminal referrals for the Select Committee's investigation to be seen as worthwhile in the eyes of the American people?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure you can actually put pressure on Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice. I think this Department of Justice, compared to the one that we've seen with Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, and I can't remember the guy who was there for like a blink of an eye. He was there for like one Scaramucci, Matt Whitaker, maybe, I think is his name. That was a more political Department of Justice, whereas this is a Department of Justice that can't really be pressured. But what I can say is that the information that's garnered from the January 6th committee does provide a roadmap for the special prosecutor to maybe, just maybe, come with charges from January 6th. I don't think Donald Trump has that much legal jeopardy from January 6th. I do think that individuals around him who obstructed justice, usually it's not the crime, it's the cover up, have a great deal of exposure from January 6th. I think that Donald Trump has the most exposure, Phil, from actually taking classified documents down to Mar-a-Lago. I think that when you see his handling of those classified documents, that and what's going on with Fani Willis in DeKalb County, Georgia, Fulton County, Georgia, those are the cases that probably give him more exposure than January 6th.
Impressive recall of Matt Whitaker's distinguished tenure at the Justice Department. Scott, there's a New York Magazine cover story which writes about Donald Trump's 2024 campaign in an article provocatively titled "Trump's Sad, Lonely, Thirsty, Broken, Basically Pretend Run for Re-Election." A Trump advisor tells Olivia Nuzzi that this campaign, quote, "It's not there. In this business, you can have it and have it so hot and it can go overnight and it's gone and you can't get it back. I think we're just seeing it's gone. The magic is gone." Is the magic gone for the former president at this point?
Well, he's certainly losing altitude. I mean, look, he's not without things to build a campaign out of. He's got money. He's got a cadre of advisors who are fully dependent upon him for their livelihoods. He's got people who want Donald Trump. I mean, there is a base of people inside the party that would rather have Trump than anybody else. So that's not an insignificant thing to start with. But where he has lost is that over the last, I mean, go back to 2016, he backs into the presidency. And from that point forward, losing in 2018, losing in 2020, losing in 21, losing in 22, all the legal stuff that has come along, every Republican out there is carrying his bags, and those bags are getting heavier all the time. So whether you want to call it losing magic or whatever, it's just getting too heavy to carry Donald Trump's bags because nobody wants to lose to Joe Biden in 2024. And that's what the Republicans are coming to terms with. And that's why you see people who look like winners, who feel like winners, like Ron DeSantis on the rise, and people who've been losing for a number of years, like Donald Trump, sinking.
You know, Bakari, the former president is responding to the criticism on Truth Social, writing, "We have almost 2 years to go. The rallies will be bigger and better than ever, but it's a little bit early, don't you think?" Is it too early to judge this campaign, or do you see real vulnerabilities based on everything that Scott just laid out in detail to some degree?
Well, there are 2 points I like to make. First is, I ain't never counting Donald Trump out of an election again in my life. Like, I firmly believe we should be on the second term of the Clinton presidency. And so I was one of the many people who was a prognosticator and got paid good money to come up here, and I was flat out wrong. So I'm not going to count him out. In fact, his campaign was worse then in 2015, 2016 than it is actually today. There is a lot of stuff, like Scott said, for him to build on. I wish Donald Trump, if he was actually going to be a good candidate, would simply say Merry Christmas. He would talk about the joy of the new year. He would talk about the lessons learned and maybe even tweet he is risen. But he's not capable of doing that. And he hasn't changed. And if you do not change, if you do not learn, if you do not adapt, if you do not mature in politics, you'll get beat every day of the week. And he hasn't been able to do those things.